if you can claim identity with a victim group, whatever that group might be, claim its history of persecution as defining your position, you've gained an enormous advantage in the competition for scarce resources, especially in the academic world. You know, we've seen this obviously with feminism, which has its roots in perfectly legitimate speculations from the Enlightenment onwards about the relation between men and women and their distinct roles in society, and the validity or otherwise of the way in which women have been treated. But in American universities from the 1960s onwards, feminism, instead of becoming a form of rational reflection on the condition of women, became a negative identity. You joined the feminist movement by way of identifying with women as victims of men, of course. And then out of that negative identity, all kinds of beliefs emerged. For example, the belief that the family is a patriarchal organisation in which men exert control over women in order to reproduce. They're using women as slaves in order to generate children who will be advancing their social power and so on. Those beliefs that emerged then out of the negative identity became beliefs which were protected. You couldn't question them. And I think you will find in many American universities today courses of so-called gender studies in which are built around these protected beliefs which cannot be questioned. Beliefs about the nature of men, what they do to women, and so on, which are truths which are immovable. So this invention of victim classes and then claiming membership of them, I think is an extremely important tool in the hands of people who don't have the support of a religion, but nevertheless need an identity. The victim identity is an identity which you can define against the surrounding order. You're standing up for the oppressed against all these comfortable people who have taken all the rewards from you, and you are entitled, therefore, to move aggressively against your surroundings. It's not for your own sake you're doing this; it's for the sake of women or gays, or now it's transsexuals. It's whatever it might be, the cause of the moment. So you can justify your indignation in this way without actually paying the cost of it, because after all, you've never yourself been a victim. You're a well-funded member of the middle classes with a free education in a university and all the rest. But nevertheless, you can claim an advantage over the people competing with you for the rewards of the academic life by identifying in this way with the victims. Leftist politics always depends upon identifying a victim, preferably as large a victim as possible, and an evil oppressor who is responsible for that victim's failure or distress. And in the case of the environment, you've got a very good way thereby of reanimating the old leftist vision. The victim is the earth, everything around us, and everything upon which we all depend. And the oppressor is, of course, the big, successful businessman or conglomerate, as always, the person who's doing well out of things. And this is a structure in leftist thinking which is impossible to remove, because I think it is implanted in us by evolution. This sense of resentment towards the successful, and the sense that they are to blame for anything that happens to the rest of us who are not successful. The desire to blame somebody who's doing well out of things is an immovable part of the human condition, and I think it's always recruited by people on the left, because it gives you an easy solution to any political difficulty. You look out of your window and you see the terrible damage that's being done to your environment. by the buildings that are going up in Ghent, or the devastation of the countryside round about, and you say, who is responsible? Of course it's the person who's making money out of this. And a new social order would confiscate all his wealth and redistribute it. So the environment naturally lends itself to that attitude. So that's one reason why the left was able to confiscate the agenda. So we have to recognise that we're in a society where people are essentially taking offence for a purpose. It's the cost-free way of gaining superiority over your interlocutor. If you can say, what you said has offended me, I'm offended as a woman, a gay, or whatever I might choose to identify myself as, you've got the upper hand without paying the genuine cost of that, which is having a good argument. And so this is a really serious assault on rationality in public discourse. And the answer to it, as I see it, is not to be intimidated and to laugh at the person who takes offence. We do have to cultivate the sense of humour. This is the thing that eventually cured us of Puritanism. In the 17th century, laughter was very difficult in Britain, even more difficult in Massachusetts. But gradually people learned to laugh at it. Butler's famous poem Hudibras, which mocked the Puritans of 17th century England, did us a tremendous amount of good. And gradually American literature learned to laugh at this. I think that tradition of satire is a precious achievement of our civilization. But it's interesting that it's precisely our disposition to laugh at the absurdities of radical Islam which is now being silenced by everyone, or by them, and by the politically correct on behalf of them. So this is where the fight begins, and all I can say is that prominent among those who fought this fight was, of course, the Free Speech Society here, which has suffered for it, but nevertheless is setting an example to us all. So the problem that we, or the problems that we confront today, in my view, largely arise from the fact that while the liberal defence of the market has been accepted, because people have come to realise that there is no real alternative, there is nevertheless a loss of confidence in the social institutions and traditions which have grown in our communities over the last 500 years or so, and which have enabled us to make use of the market so successfully. So the problem for conservatives in the modern world is how to as it were, safeguard those social institutions without also sacrificing the liberal inheritance in economic life. Often socialists come in my country campaign in the following way. They say, look, all this market economics has simply undermined social institutions. We socialists are going to restore them, and we're going to restore them by using the power of the state to bring security and comfort to those who are the victims of the social disintegration of our time. And that argument is made here in Belgium too, isn't it? And in fact it's made all across Europe. That somehow socialism is there not to produce a new kind of socialist economy. We agree that we need a market economy, but it's there to produce a new kind of society, to use the money raised by taxation in order to introduce social justice into the surrounding order. And this means completely rearranging things and making the state, rather than the family, the principal institution to which people turn in their hour of need. That is what has been happening all across Europe. And I think the conservative position is that not only is that not necessary, because in fact the family and individual communities can take charge of their life successfully. Not only is it not necessary, but it also is going to be counterproductive in just the way that the socialist economy was counterproductive. The state cannot replace the ordinary traditions and customs through which people relate to each other successfully. All it can do is make them dependent upon a great administrative machine, and thereby lose the sense of responsibility for their own lives. And I think that argument is beginning to be made, and if you make it, of course, you are immediately accused of being cruel, uncharitable, having no compassion for the poor, etc., even if you're motivated precisely by the opposite. So there is, we know that there's a whole rhetoric here which has to be dealt with very carefully, and it's a rhetoric which comes largely through prejudices that have been inherited from the socialist experiment.